Hey, welcome everyone to the Master Template webinar. Master Template is my baby, my proud creation that we've got a new version of this year that I'm so very pleased to share with you. Let me know that you can hear me and that you can see my screen, and we'll get started momentarily. When you're typing into the chat window, just tell me where you're calling in from as well. It's always fun to see that. So let's see here if we've got comments there. Okay. All right. So, hey, Michael from Seattle, Cheryl from Colorado, Alfred, Carol, Alfred from Savannah. Okay. Andy from Cornwall. All right. Tallahassee, New Jersey. Great. All right. So I think we're seeing my screen okay, and you're seeing me, and you can hear me. Let me just turn the light up a little bit more. Here, it's just get that going. So welcome everyone to Master Template, the Office Standard for ArchiCAD. In today's presentation, I'll be sharing with you some of the best practices for using ArchiCAD by optimizing a template for your startup and running of projects. If you don't know me, and if you, or let's say, want to know a little bit more about me, I've been working with ArchiCAD since 1989. Got my degree in computer science back in the 70s. So I go back a ways. But I've been working with architects with ArchiCAD for almost 30 years now. I was a reseller for 20 years. Had my office in Los Angeles. Now I live in Northern California. During the years that I was selling the software, I was also training people how to use it and supporting all the technical questions, and developed a very strong sense of what were the best ways to use ArchiCAD, the best practices. And so when we started to sell a lot of copies of the software, I think it was back in 2007, I had my main trainer and consultant at the time, architect Scott Bulmer, create a template under my direction that we could install in various client sites, and made it so that it was a very powerful base that could be customized. And then as I did that, or we worked on it, I realized that it was something that could be shared worldwide using the web as a way to promote it and to support and train people on it. So in 2007, for ArchiCAD 11, Master Template was born. Every year since then, I've updated it to keep pace with the latest ArchiCAD, keep adding new ideas, new ways of approaching things. Now, what is an ArchiCAD template? Some of you know it extremely well, some are newer users. It's the project file that you use to get started with your projects. Now, you can start a project just by saying, copying another file that you've already got and deleting the building, or you can just say, give me a new file based on current settings. But generally, the best practice is to say, give a new file based on a template, either the Graphisoft template or one that you've purchased or one that you've customized. And ideally, you want to customize your template so that it already has your title block on it. It already has your preferred ways of doing schedules and layout numbering and things like that. Now, when you have a template that's well suited for your office, you won't need to, on the fly, create new layers, create new wall types, define your schedules, etc. You'll basically have done the work once, or have it already done at some point and optimized, and you'll be able to focus on your building, your design. Now, in the box with ArchiCAD, Graphisoft provides a pretty decent template. It's gotten better over the years, but they are forced, I would say, or let's say their motivation is to make sure that it's a template that can be used as part of demonstrations and for newer users, so that it's not overly complex. So one of their, let's say, probably important factors is to make sure the template doesn't seem overwhelming and too detailed, etc., so that people go, oh, this looks pretty straightforward. I could get used to this, or I could work with ArchiCAD. Now, one of the issues with that is that then you're always having to add new things because there are not all the layers that you need. The schedules, there's only a few schedules that they include. You most likely need other ones. So you're having to create things from scratch. And of course, the temptation is just, oh, I need something. Let me just add a layer. Let me just do this. So you work quickly to get out the drawings, but not necessarily with the best practices methods. So with a robust template like MasterTemplate, the idea is that you've got things easily at hand to speed up your work and not have to redo things for each project, standardize things so that they are consistent. Now, I'm just going to go over some of the key principles for using ArchiCAD effectively. And then I'm going to dig in. We're going to be looking at the template. It's not just going to be, words on a screen. But back in 2010, I formalized a method and an approach to ArchiCAD that I call the best practices method and the 7 keys to best practices. And even though the program has changed over the years, these core principles, every time I look at them, I go, you know what? They still stand up. So here's a very brief summary. Get organized. Well, the more organized you are, the more likely you'll be efficient. Having everything easily at hand, not having to waste effort. Doing things once means that when you set up the title block, you don't have to set it up again. When you set up wall assemblies or favorite elements properly, you'll have them at hand. You won't have to do it again. Now, saving your settings, a variety of ways to do that. Favorites are a good way, and the template can incorporate your preferred favorites as well as other ways of getting access, such as what you'll see today, the interactive legend of visual favorites, which is a kit of parts that you can go and say, I need one of those, and just eyedrop it. Makes it very quick. So you're saving the work of having to set things up. Now, working from the general to the specific is sort of a common thing for any architectural design process. After all, you start with a schematic design, looking at how it meets the program requirements and other issues, setbacks and limits. And then as you go forward, you start getting more specific about the wall assemblies and the specific spacing and layout of things. Now in ArchiCAD, if you give ArchiCAD information about your intention, so for example, I want the window to be centered between these 2 interior walls. Okay, so you're going to put in the window by its center point, and you're going to tell it where that is. Now, if the window changes size and you've put it in by the center point, it'll just keep the center the same while it gets wider or narrower. Same way with doors. If you put in a door a few inches, a specific distance from the corner, and the door gets bigger or smaller, but you've anchored it in the right place, you now are working with ArchiCAD structures so that you don't have to redo that. Now, when you create walls, most often you're going to be specifying the outside framing line or the outside of the wall. And if that's your design intent, that this building has certain setbacks and certain placement on the site for the wall, then if you change the wall assembly, get more specific about it, it won't. It'll work just fine because the wall will stay locked in the right place. So that's using ArchiCAD structure, where you're telling it certain things, knowing that it's going to maintain that. In the same way, when you create a drawing or you create a view for a detail or for an elevation or something like that, you name it in the project map in a way that will carry forward through to the title on the layout sheet. Now, while you can manually change that, so that on this layout sheet it has a different name, it's better to use ArchiCAD structure by setting it in the project map, because then if you change it in one place and the view name changes and the title changes. Now, modeling is something that we do all the time in ArchiCAD, and the better you model, the less you have to draw. In fact, in recent years, it's gotten to the point where some advanced users like Tim Ball, who I've worked closely with, have stated that he doesn't really do detail drawings anymore. He models in such detail that he can do a cutaway in 3D or in a orthogonal view like a traditional detail and simply put annotation on top of it. And in fact, the annotation, a lot of it is pulled directly from the elements, where he's specified a drawing note or other information in the element data, and then the label is simply just reflecting that. So the better you follow these methods, the less you'll have to draw, the quicker it'll go. Even though it takes more attention to model cleanly, it pays off in the long term. Now, keeping it safe is something that we don't have to worry about as much anymore because the autosave has gotten so robust, but still understanding the practices for migrating projects forward over the years and just having multiple version backups so you can go back and say, oh, 2 weeks ago we changed that balcony because the client wanted it, but now they want the old version. Okay, well, I happen to have a version that was saved, back a ways. So that's keeping the data safe. All right, so those are best practices that are built into ArchiCAD's usage. If you follow those, you're going to get much more benefit. Now, a template, again, I'll be showing you the template very, very shortly, but I wanted to give some things in your head about this. A good template will have a well thought out layer system, so you don't need to create new layers or layer combinations on the fly very much. Occasionally, yes, but not as a routine thing. It'll have all the attributes such as the fills, surfaces, building materials, composite, wall assemblies, floor assemblies, etc., profiles. All the ones that you commonly need will be in the template. Now, each project will have some specific changes, but you won't have to be routinely redoing things and making them a little different each time, etc. A good template will give you fast access to frequently used components. So you're doing kitchens, you just need to have your kitchen cabinets all easily there so you can drag them in, not have to go search through the library, find the cabinet, pick it, change some settings, etc. Even bringing in room groupings, I'm going to demonstrate that, can be a very fast way working with a template. The view map, I've seen so many users go and create views on the fly just as they're working and dropping them on sheets, and then they end up with a whole bunch of views that just say floor plan or the east elevation or all sorts of things, and they go, I don't know which ones I'm using. If you have the view map really well set up, then you'll know where everything is. You'll have a minimum of customized views. It's not that customized views are bad, it's just that you want them in moderation on top of your very standard view set. The layout book should be set up with your standard numbering and with drawings pre-linked. Graphisoft does that in the standard template. What this means is that, for example, with MasterTemplate, you just draw your building, or let's just say you copy your building in from another file into the template, and all of a sudden it shows up on the sheets. Now you may have to adjust it because drawings are different sizes, and maybe you can't fit two elevations on the same sheet. It's a big project, so you create a new sheet, but they're already in the layout book. Similarly, a good template will have all of the schedules and filters and options, etc., that allow you to see the data and the model in all the ways that you need. Some of the things I really worked on with MasterTemplate this year was to make sure that there were even more of these preset views and graphic overrides, so you can have sketch output if you want. You can have structural drawings or structural model coming up easily. You'll see these coming up soon. So in MasterTemplate, the philosophy that I've always found was to set up as much as possible so that you wouldn't have to do it. Speeds up time. If you're a newer or intermediate user, you will find this useful. You won't have to figure things out. They'll be there for you. And even for an advanced user, it just will save you a lot of time because it's easier to rework things than to just create something from scratch. Now, I build things on top of the Graphisoft standard, so if you want to migrate something in from a project that you started, it'll be easier. But there's a lot added on top of that, so it's just much more robust. Now, the sample project you're going to see, that's going to be my main tool today, is showing you the template in the context of a project. Now, it's a small little building, but it's very intricate, all the ways that things are put together. And as I'm sure you know, something small doesn't have to necessarily be simple. It can be extremely carefully crafted. It's a great tool for self-study, so you can just open it up and just sort of see how something was done, as well as I'm going to be using it extensively for presentations and demonstrations and teaching. So I always aim to push the limits of myself and for you as a user, but make it easy to understand and easy to implement for your actual project work. So with that being said, we're going to go into MasterTemplate, and I'll be talking about the interactive legends and what's new in context. So let's see everybody commenting in. All right, we've got a good crowd here from all over the world, and let's get going with MasterTemplate. All right, so you should be seeing this small little buildings here, the sample project. The sample project is a way to understand how everything fits together. Because if you have just a blank file when you're starting a project, then I can point at things, but they won't. When you change from one style of view to another, you won't see the difference. But here, it's very obvious. Now, MasterTemplate is, if you look at the project map, it's always standardized. I mean, there's stories and sections and elevations, etc. That's just built into ArchiCAD. But the view map is a little different. The view map can be however you want it to be set up. Now, in this case, we've got a space for the imported materials. These might be your DWG surveys, contract documents, manufacturer's information, whatever you want. There are some folders here to put in views of worksheets, typically, or whatever, wherever you want to be storing this information. So these are just some placeholders for sketches or consultant imports, etc. Now, design obviously is where you're going to be creating the building and doing most of the creative work. Construction documents for your output, and then presentations, of course, can be done at any point, whether it's early in schematics or later after completing the project. And there's a folder for dropping things into that you don't want to be in your face. In other words, just I'm not going to be using this for a while, or in this project I don't think it's relevant. Instead of deleting part of the view map, you can just drag it in there. It just gets hidden. Now, if I look at the design section here, we'll see that there is something called canvas limits. What canvas limits does is it simplifies the display to just the walls, shows all the markers, shows the site. So now this is, we can see how big the project is on screen. Now, if you're trying to figure out what size sheet it's going to go on, you can do that. In fact, we can have a view of the, let's see, choose reference here. Just say reference sheet of, what am I know I have some, okay, let's see. So we can have different references for the sheets here. So let's see, floor plans. Okay, so you can see where this fits on the sheet here. Now, when we're in preliminary design, when you're starting a project, you want to have most of the layers available to you, because you're going to be drawing walls, maybe putting in some landscaping or some furniture or the roofs. All of those things are part of your initial design. So if I turn this on now here, we'll see a mess, because it's hard to make out when you've got all of the things overlaid on top of it. But in the beginning, it's great. Now, later on, you're going to be starting to work on the building design and needing to have the layers turned on for working on how your roof relates to the walls, etc. So those, again, are going to be useful for the design. But let's just take interior design, and this is a layer combination, obviously, for just showing the walls and furniture, etc. So this is all part of your design process. Now, one of the things that I've added into MasterTemplate this year are some sketch plans. So if I go to first floor sketch here, you can see that it looks a little bit sketchy. I'll just zoom in a bit on it. Now, that's using a combination of a simplified view. In other words, the walls are just parallel lines, no detail. The doors and windows are shown with simple line work just to represent it, and the line type is swapped. Now, you can do this in your own template by simply setting up these things. Now, this is a graphic override that just bring this in from the other screen, that makes everything sort of white and swaps in all the line work, all types, to using a sketch line. So this is a graphic override, and then separately from that, there is a model view option that is specifically for simplified drawings that you might use for a site plan or a sketch plan, where we're showing doors and windows in a certain level of detail, just a very simple thing in the low level of detail rather than more complex ones. So this is all set up. So when you're drawing and you're doing it, if you want to output something and you just take a screenshot and send it to the client, it sort of has that hand-drawn look. On the other hand, if you want something simple but more precise looking, you can use the schematic plans, which again have some overrides compared to, let's say, what we have for our construction documents, where we've got the first floor plan here with much more detail, all the markers, the dimensions, etc. Now, what I want you to think about is how useful it is to have all of these things at hand. How much time you take with your template or with your file to prepare a set of drawings or print out something for a meeting. The idea of a template is that if it's all preset in ways that are generally matching what your practices are, it's going to just save a lot of time. Just simply select something and it's there. Now, in the view map, as we go through this, there are some additional resources that I call legends, and there's some detail things here. For example, if I go to the 2D legends here and I go to kitchen and bath, what is this? This is a worksheet with a set of kitchen cabinets. Now, this is an object. It is actually a cabinet, and this is just line work here. So this is just to help you see what it is, but this is the element. So if I wanted to lay out a kitchen, let's just start with a corner cabinet. I'm going to eyedrop this here, and I'll go back to the first floor plan here. And let's just say I was going to do it off to the side. I can just literally click. Let's see, this is what's going on here. I think I've got the cabinet here. You should be able to, there we go, click here. And let's go back to the legend here for the kitchen and bath and say that I want to put in a cabinet next to it. So I'll eyedrop here. I'll go to the corner that I want to do that, and I'll go back to the first floor plan, and I'll go and drop this in here. And we can rotate this around depending upon the settings for your insertion method. Now, to speed this up, one of the things that you can do in this initial process, if you want to refer to this, is you can undock the tab, for example, put this, let's say if I scroll this over here, put this here, and then we can do the same thing. We can undock this tab. And let's go back to that, to the first floor. There we go. Here. So now I can literally go and say that, I want to do another cabinet, but this time I'm going to connect it to this corner here and rotate this around. And let's say that I want to put in something else, let's say a single cabinet here. So I'll go and eyedrop this and put this in here. And then let's just say I have another corner, but a different style corner here. So do this. Now, what I want to point out is that there's nothing magical here in terms of just I'm not forcing ArchiCAD to do something that it's not built to do. It's just setting it up so that it's so easy to do. Now we'll just go in and put in some of the upper cabinets here. So let's say that I have a corner one here, and I just drop that in, take another one here and drop this in. Now, the settings of these, we just look at what I've got. You can see very quickly, I've laid out the start of a kitchen. You say, oh, well, wait a second, this one should have a sink. So you go into the settings of it and go and say, I want a sink of a certain type. Say, okay. Change the tap, all of those sort of things. So this is an example of what I call an interactive legend of visual favorites. So a legend, if you think about it, commonly has a series of elements, graphic elements, with some text next to it saying what this is. This is an outlet or a ceiling fan, or it's showing the wall types, etc. Now, it's interactive in the case that we're going to eyedrop it and work with it. And these are visual arrangements of things that are your favorite types. Now, do you like the way that this is set up with the overhang and the backsplash and things like that? If you don't, well, of course, I can select all of these after I put them in and change the style. That's really very powerful. Or I could change them in the template to a preferred style, or even have more than one style. So one for a contemporary kitchen, one for a more traditional kitchen, etc. No limit to that, but having it in the template means that it just becomes a piece of cake to customize or extend the whole system. Now, in fact, this system here, if I go back to the floor plan view, and let me just dock this into place. So we'll just go put it back into the dock, and let me just go get that other kitchen and bath one, and we'll just pop that back into the tab bar at the top here. Now I'm going to go to what I call the interactive legends of visual favorites, which are available here. So this is a huge kit of parts. This kit of parts includes standard walls, doors, windows, objects, and it even has room groupings as well. You'll see down in the section here for residential components. These are other sets of information for rooms, etc. Now, this is available in a worksheet. If I go to the project map here, it is in one of the worksheets. Now, if you're an experienced user, you may know that worksheets are for 2D information. They're not for 3D. So the question is this really 3D? And how did I get 3D stuff into this worksheet? Notice that I actually still have the floor plan here. This is a worksheet. Normally, if it was on a floor plan, it would be in the same window, right? Now, let's take a look at, is it 3D? And the answer is yes. If I go to 3D views of the legends, for example, here is a kitchen group from, or the kitchen ones you were seeing a minute ago, all the little parts there. And here is a quick kitchen view. So this is a preset group of elements that are in the template. Now, I call this section of the interactive legends quick rooms because they're a quick way to bring in a room grouping. Now, of course, you may look at it and say, I would never do a kitchen like that. That's fine, but get the idea. Here is a kitchen. It could have been taken from a real project and just saved in a convenient place. And now I'm going to go grab it, put it into the project, and actually just change it around, make it a different proportion or a different layout. So how do you do that? This is the power of a preset resource inside a template. This is a 3D view. I'm going to go to, instead of the worksheet view of the legends, I'm going to look at the 3D view of the legends here. Now I'm actually on the plan, because the trick here is that the legends are sitting on the floor plan, but normally they're hidden. And I'm going to explain how I do that in a minute. But let's take a look at that kitchen layout here. Let's see. Where is my, there it is, that's the kitchen here. I'm just going to zoom in on this. All right, so that was what we were seeing in 3D. I'm going to go and just draw a marquee around this, say single story, select all. So now I've got all of these selected. I'm going to copy this here. And now I'm going to go back to where my real project is. Now, before I do that, I'm just going to say fit in window and look at what you see here. That whole huge set of materials that I showed you is off to one side. Here's the project that I'm working on over here. Now, you could maintain your kit of parts off to the side of your project and zoom back and forth between the resources that you've got and the project. But what I found is that by using some features of ArchiCAD structure to put this in a Hotlink module, it allows several benefits. It means that this can be turned off by simply turning off what's called the master module for the legend. So I'm just going to hide that. And you see when I do that, this just disappears because all of those elements are imported into the project as a link to another file. This also means that if you have resources like this in an office, you can update them and all projects will now have new resources updated or extended there. Now, if I go back to, let's say, we'll go back to the canvas limits. So that's just a quick way, in this case, to jump back over here. And then let's go to interior design, where I'm seeing this. And here you see that little set of kitchen cabinets that I just created. I'm going to go and paste in the ones that I had there. Here they are. And now, of course, I say, well, you know, the walls are really, these aren't the walls. I'm going to be dropping this in to the building. Let's just take this and say it's a really open kitchen. So I'm going to go and rotate this around, you know, and just extend it and let's see, what is that? That's a countertop or something like that. I'm not sure here, but I can just drag this over and change things around. So now it's not going to be the same arrangement, but I can easily use these elements. And if I look in 3D, you know, they won't be quite right. Ooh, this looks like there's some funny settings on these sides of the cabinets. I'm always finding some things that need adjustment there. But I think you get the idea that by having individual elements as well as room groupings, you can very quickly lay out your design. So that's quick access to visual favorites. Now, let me just undo, actually just undo this here. And let me just actually just get rid of all of those elements. And we'll get rid of the extra pieces there, and we'll proceed on. So tell me if you think that having a kit of parts easily at hand could help your work go faster. Tell me if this is something that you see potentially useful. Type it into the questions box. Now, the template here has all of these legends available as a resource. We now are going to shift focus to looking at the project in different ways. Now, if you drop in your own building here, all of these views will have the proper effect. So we're just going to be looking at the sample project, but imagine your building or your whole set of projects for the next year and 5 years and 10 years, just being able to focus on drawing your model, drawing your building, and you end up with all of these things just sort of easily at hand. All right, so I think Carol says, I think it could be useful. David Lohmeyer, absolutely a great idea. Richard Pratt says, the template seems to be residential focused as a commercial architect. Let's see. all the kit of parts wouldn't be needed. Well, actually, if you look here at the, go back to the interactive legends in a worksheet. So by the way, now I'm in a worksheet where I can jump around to save views. And let's go to, let's see, we have public restrooms here. All right, so this is a set, commercial restrooms. We have some other ones here that are, let's see, I think, where is it? Here's lobby, reception, and waiting. Here's office and conference room. There's nothing specific about residential. This is a general purpose approach to working with ArchiCAD. And in fact, hey, you may never make an office like that, but maybe you do hospitals. All right, so you can put in quick rooms for an operating room, or you know, the where the nurse's station is, or things like that. These are all groups of elements that you literally can just paste in from your a project and then have quick access. So as many as you need. This is a system that's very extensible. And you notice that this is off to this in a separate area from the project. So I can switch back and forth either by having the two windows docked or undocked next to each other, or just simply clicking on the tab bar. So nothing specific about residential. It's a very general purpose approach. So a lot of comments, good idea, without doubt, yes, it would be useful. Stan says, can a building that is moving into CD phase be migrated into the new template? So when we're bringing something into the template, it's very easy to copy the entire building by using a marquee that has the thick border. So it's actually selecting multiple stories, and you'll want to turn on and unlock all layers. So you can literally just copy and paste. All the floor plans will come in, all the annotation, dimensions, labels, etc. will come in. You'll need to synchronize the layers because the layer system is different in MasterTemplate, but that's pretty easy. You can, let's just say that you have 25 layers that you've used so far. You know, could be 15, could be more, but whatever they are, you just simply go and say, oh, the layer called A walls, you know, here. In MasterTemplate, it's called A walls exterior, or just their different naming. And you literally say, I'm going to delete this layer and move everything onto the next layer. So if we're looking at the layer settings here, so we'll take a look at the layer settings. But if we have some layers that came in from when you pasted it in, you literally can go and say, you know, this columns one here, I'm going to go and delete it and put everything that was on the columns one onto this layer here. You know, there's another layer for, I'll put it on beams or something like that. Basically, you're going to have to synchronize the layers. So in a few minutes, you could just swap in the layer system. Once you've done that, all of the layer combinations will work in MasterTemplate. All of the preset views will work. It basically, you can bring it in. Now, what would take more time and may not be worth it, depending upon how far you've gotten, is each elevation and section will come up as it did, but the 2D information won't be there because it'll be generating it fresh. So if you've done much annotation in your 2D elevations and sections, you'd have to have the old project open and copy the 2D information from the front elevation, paste it into the one, you know, in the new one. And of course, if there are dimensions, you'd have to recreate those because they can't copy and paste directly. If you've done detail drawings, you would essentially have to copy over the data. So in early to mid phases of a project, it's very practical to migrate. The further along you go, where you have more and more details, you have a whole lot of sheets all set up carefully, it will take more time. So it just depends. Up to a certain point, it's well worth it, and after a certain point, it may not be. All right. Monica says, how do you include your own favorites on the legend? Well, basically the legend is maintained as a separate file, or actually there's several files. There's one for the standard kit of parts, which You can modify, but I recommend just leaving it alone. That way, if I send out an update, you can just drop that in. But there's an area or a separate file for your office favorites. So you can put as much as you want over there. And basically, that's where ideally you put it in for use in multiple projects. And then for a really big project that's going on for a year or 5 years or something like that, you may have project favorites. And then you basically put the things that you want to reuse and have access to in that file. And that would be used only for that project, or maybe for the schools at a certain school district that have those favorites. So you're basically going to drop those in, copy and paste them in. They will show up then in the legend, and you'll have full access to it. Okay. Now, how do we get walls and other 3D elements into the worksheet for reference? I told you there's a trick. I'm in the worksheet here. All right. See all this stuff. Now, the stuff that we're seeing here is 3D. Here's a wall, etc. But I'm in a worksheet here. All right, worksheets don't have 3D. How did I do that? Okay, I'm just teasing you. All right, look here at this little icon. This is our virtual trace. I'm going to turn virtual trace off. Oh, there's nothing there. Well, what is there is, if I bring this up, a trace and reference of a particular view of the legend. Remember, I was showing you that it was off to the side. So this is a view of the stuff on the floor plan that's in 3D, and we're just seeing it in a natural view. Often we use the different color for legend elements here, but it's nice to say I'd like to use the original color, so it just looks natural, right? Okay, now so the legend exists on the floor plan, and it is referenced in from outside. Now, how did I make it go away? When we're on the floor plan here, and I do fit in window, this is all we see. Well, remember that thing I was talking about with the layers, the legend one? It's brought in as a hotlink, and hotlinks have the option, or have a built-in feature, that there is one layer, and it can be any layer you like, but it's set up in MasterTemplate to use this special one called Master Module Legend. And if that's turned off, the whole thing disappears from the plan, or the 3D views. Basically, it's just not visible in the model. So that's some of the technical side of it. Now, what I want to point out is you could do this yourself. You could do it in the Graphisoft template. You could do it in your own template, but you'd have to very carefully set everything up, and that's going to take some effort. You're going to have some learning curve with it. With MasterTemplate, it's already there, and you can extend it by simply just dropping things into it. So that's another little pitch for just saying, you know what, instead of figuring it out yourself, you could just get it, purchase it. So, but ultimately, if you think that MasterTemplate has cool ideas, but you don't want to use any of the standards, it's just too different from what you have, here's two options. Learn what I teach you and just do it yourself, or buy MasterTemplate, study it, and model or copy the structure in your own template. So in other words, you can just use it as a learning tool. And I've had people tell me, you know what, your template's too different from mine, but I love the ideas, so I'm going to use the ideas in my own template. So that's great. That's a great way to do it. All right, let's go on to some of the 3D views and see how these work. So we'll close up the legends or the design section here, and let's look at the 3D. Now we're still in the design section here. I haven't gotten into construction documents, because in design, there's many different ways that you want to look at the building. Now, if we're in design, we can have multiple views pre-saved. So for example, I look at the building here, and this building is not too fancy, just 2 stories, etc. I can have a view, let's say, saved from another viewpoint. This is the back of the building. Now, I could rotate around, but I'm just going to show you that if I rotate this around here, notice how dark it is because the sun is on the other side. So it's sort of convenient to have a view from the back where I've gone into the settings here and I've moved the sun around. So you see if I move the sun here, you'll see it change like that. So these are a couple of views that are built into the template from one angle, another one, and then there are ones that are for temporary ones. Now here I was working on the balcony in the back, which is actually pretty darn complex, even though it's a very simple looking thing here. And I just wanted to be able to do a cutaway. So I saved that view. Or here's another one that's of a different section with a cutaway with the framing in here. Now, and the floor layer turned off just the floor framing. So these views here, of course, you can extend it. So if I were to say, want to look in this angle, zoom in here and switch my layer combination to the building only here, turn off the site information and maybe adjust this position. So I've turned off the site, so now the stairs are floating, right? Well, now I can go and I can either redefine the view, or I can just simply save a new view and save the view, name here, give it a name. So this is just built into ArchiCAD basic functionality, but here's the place where I recommend doing it in MasterTemplate. You know, let's say front corner view, all right? So now, at any point, you know, I can go back and forth between here and any other view just by double clicking. All right, so that's how easy it is to create that. You can also redefine these views. Now, if I go to the open up the 3D window, here are a whole lot of presets that I think are fantastic. I really worked on this in MasterTemplate 22 to make sure that they were just, we were taking advantage of the new possibilities that are available with graphic overrides and model view options that we, you know, never had so easily at hand. Now here is the existing building. You notice this area here doesn't have an extension. Here is planned status. All right. Now what was different about it? Simply the renovation setting. If I go back to existing plan, there it is. So these are saving there. Now, if I want to look at it with shadows, you know, it's sort of nice, it delineates things, but sometimes like when I was working on the railings and certain parts of it, the shadows made it hard to see. So we can turn off shadows. Now, you can do that yourself. Of course, you can go into the 3D styles and switch between ones with shadows and ones without. And in fact, there are many different styles. For example, if I go to AXO hidden line, this is another style of viewing. If I go to simple AXO hidden line, you notice that now the windows and doors are opaque and simplified. That's done using by changing a model view option. And these are model view options that are very powerful. And I don't have time to explain all of them, but essentially, you know, there are ones for all sorts of different types of design viewing. And here it's set for a white model. Now, if this was a very complex project, you know, this would help in terms of just working with it, meeting with a client and just showing it sort of the basics where they're not focused on detail. And why do you have a windowsill this wide? You know, things like that. You just say, hey, here's where we're thinking of the shape and form. But in a really complex project, you may want it even simpler. So we might go to a mode where we are simplifying to schematic level, and you can see the little stairs here are only showing the just the surface, the theoretical surface, and the railings are simplified as well. Now this view here is done using OpenGL, so even for a huge project, it's going to be very quick, whereas the one that I was showing earlier is using what's called hidden line vectorial here. Now with hidden line vectorial, it's very precise, and you could zoom in on it and it's going to be perfect. But as when I rotate this around, you see how ArchiCAD is having to simplify the view to a wireframe, and then when I let go, it refreshes. Now one of the reasons why the line work one is useful is if I say take a perspective here, is that I can literally copy this perspective line work and change it. So maybe I want to do a sketch view of this. Now, there are some built-in sketch styles in terms of rendering, and they can be pretty effective, but there are certain things that you can't do with those that you can do if you do it with line work. So for example, I can go here and I'll just sort of copy a section of this. So I can go here and copy this. Now, what is it doing? It's copying the line work here of the edges. And now if I go, I'll just go, there's a section here under presentation views. I think that's where I've got it, under present plans. Let's see, where is it? Present renderings. Now I just created this section with the sketch ones, and now I'm a little confused. Actually, let me just go into the worksheets, just because this is brand new, and so I don't remember where exactly I put it. So if I go into my worksheets, now by the way, the worksheets are very extensive sets of resources, but if you want to say which ones am I actively using, you can say just these ones. So by having a clone folder in the structure, it'll automatically put views of everything in a category like worksheets. But I've set up in version 22 a place where you can say, hey, here's the 3 or 4 or 8 or 10 worksheets that I'm using, even though there may be 15 or 20 in all. Now, here's the sketch views here. Now what you'll see here, this is a slightly earlier version of it. Let me just go off to the side and I'll just paste in here. Center of current view, all right. And we'll just drag this over to the side. All right, now each of these is a line. So because it's a line, I could switch it from a normal line to, for example, a sketch line. And then it gets a little bit of a wavery quality there. Or that's sketch 2. Here's the original sketch 1, which is a little bit more wavery. Now, what I can do here is I can select all of these lines and change them. You can see how wavery they are. This is maybe like a little drunken sketch here. But by doing it this way, I can maybe make the larger parts of the building a little bit more wavy, but select these guys. Let's just say that these guys here, I'll just demonstrate this really quickly. I'll select these lines and I'll change them from sketch 3 to sketch 2. And you can see how they now are much closer here. These ones are really broken. These are more straight. So this is something built into the template. I created some additional sketch line styles. I have saved the view as we were looking at here for that you can use. Now, again, you can manually set this up in terms of your views, but it's already here. So you just put your building in and you get it. Now, in terms of perspectives, we put in cameras. So if you've worked with ArchiCAD a long time, you know that you can put in cameras on the floor plan. And so you can say that here's one view that's of interest, here's a different view, here's another view, etc. So these are all saved views. And this is a clone folder with all the ones in a particular path. So the path could follow a sequence, or could just be random views that are of interest here. We also have built in to the template keyframes. So what are keyframes? These are specific simple views, in this case from the different sides. So there are 4 of them. And if I go back to the floor plan here and we zoom out, you'll see that there are 4 camera positions. And you may not be able to see it on your screen, but there's a little gray circular line around here. So with these camera positions, I can literally go and create an animated walkthrough. So if I go, let's just switch my layer combination to model, building, and site. So it's going to be set up to show the building plus its environment. And I'll go to the document, creative imaging, create fly through. So when I do that, it basically allows me to create it in the 3D window or render it to create just those 4 positions or have in between, there's a setting for how many frames in between. And if I do it in the 3D window, I can do it very quickly. And instead of right now saving it, I'm just going to show it. So I'll do show, and you'll see it's just going to start to rotate around here. So in the webinar, what's going to happen is you're seeing it jump with little time gaps. On my screen, it's going quicker and smoother. And of course, if you were to say, hey, instead of having 10 frames in between each corner, you had 50 frames in between each corner, and you saved it as an animation, hey, you now have an animation there. So this is something, again, built into ArchiCAD in terms of an animation, built into MasterTemplate in terms of a set of views. Now, if the cameras are too far or too close, you can literally select them and just move them further using the rescale command. Literally, you can just say rescale and it'll just move them apart. Or closer together. And in fact, in this case, one of the views, the back of the project, you can see this little slight rise. The camera was being blocked a little bit, and I just simply said raise it up about 10 feet, and now it's looking over the top, and you didn't even notice it because it just smoothly transitioned. Okay, so we're now looking at the 3D viewing styles, perspectives. You can also save all sorts of perspectives here, as I had here. Each one of these is a viewpoint plus what layers are turned on, and where the sun is, etc. there. And so in the template, there are a few of these presets, but of course you can add more. Now the idea is that you're going to put your favorite ones that you're using, either while you're working on a particular area like the back balcony or the site plan or things like that. You'll save those to jump to them. But there's now a place for all of these for you. Now, if we go here a little further, we're going to see some other ones that I think are very dramatic differences. For example, instead of seeing the building solid, we can see through the walls. This is using a feature in ArchiCAD called wireframe layers. And you'll see that the walls are set to be wireframe. If you look carefully at this, this is solid, this is wireframe here. It's just got a slightly different icon look, and you can click on it to make that solid, or click to make it wireframe by doing that. Now, when it's wireframe, you can literally go and select elements within the building here. ArchiCAD will essentially let your cursor click through it. Now, this is visually okay. I mean, it's pretty interesting to show a client or even yourself to see how things laid out. But there's another way to do this, and that is, I think, visually cleaner, and that's using graphic overrides. So now the layer is solid, but I'm using what's called a graphic override that says make the walls see-through. And the rules for that are that if the element type is a wall, make it glass, or you could make it airspace, which would be totally clear, but glass allows you to sort of see the, just have a little bit of a distinction visually that you're looking through that. Now, one of the issues here is that I can't select, if I go try to click on the table, it's going to select the wall because the wall is still considered solid. So, this I like because you can see the windows and doors much more cleanly, but it has some trade-offs there. Now we can go and say, look through the entire exterior. So now I'm looking through the walls and the roof. We can look at, variety of different styles. So here's one where the graphic override says, if it's any 3D element, make it airspace, just show the lines. But if it's a framing element, if it's on one of the framing layers, then actually make it solid and put it in a uniform color. So this is a quick way to do that. Now this is all live, of course, and we can just see how the framing is. Now right now in this project, the lower section has joists. The 3D modeling in the lower section is fairly extensive. The upper section is a little bit more 3D, 2D hybrid. And I do that deliberately so that you can see different legitimate strategies. As we go into sections, you're going to see how that works, because I don't believe one size fits all. It takes more skill to model everything in 3D than you may have the time or patience or skill level to do. But if you want to push the limits and you want to see how a project can be set up, I'm going to show you some rather impressive things. Now here's a structural model. So this is one where we're doing two things. We're going into, or three things. We're doing, we're saying that the partial structure display is only showing the core of elements that are labeled as load bearing. Now it's up to you to say this wall is load bearing, that one's not, etc. But in general, you can just designate it, select all the walls on the exterior wall layer, call them load bearing, etc. And defining what's the core. Well, when you're defining a wall assembly, or a profile, you can say this part is core, this part is the finish, etc. Now, in addition, I've got condoc structural plans. So this is model view options, which are doing some simplification of things, and in fact, actually saying turn off the doors and windows in this case. And then we have the graphic overrides, where we're saying just make everything sort of empty, except for the, well, in this case, the walls in the 3D that were insulated. I didn't want to show pink. It looked sort of ugly. So I actually overrode it just for visual purposes to make it this sort of plywood look. And I could just make it a gray or any color you want. But right now, set to be sort of this plywood thing. We can look at see-through roofs. Here again, this is with wireframes, so I can literally select elements and change them. Here we see see-through roofs in a slightly different style, more the glass look here. And then this is just a custom view when I was working on some of the rafter tails and some of the other elements related to the roof that were done. And it's showing some of the cutting elements, the things that are what's called solid element operators, that we're trimming off some simple things. So for example, this rafter tail, you notice the handles here? It's just a simple beam that just has a straight edge, but it's got actually here, let's see if I can rotate this around. You can see this profile here. This profile is a rafter tail cutaway. So it's basically cutting away part of the simple volume to create the negative space, which is that shape there. Now this is one way to model it. You basically put in a bunch of straight elements and then just carve off the end. And if you change that shape, it just changes the shape of the end. It can be a very effective way to do it. But I actually went in and did some other things in other parts of the model to demonstrate these things. Now let's look at some other ones here that are cutting planes. Now, what is a cutting plane? A cutting plane is basically an interactive way to just cut through the model and look at it, and you can actually work in that mode. Now, if I say cutting plane high here, this saved one, it's actually turning on the cutaway. And now if I click here, let's see if I say show cutting planes, I can grab this invisible cutting plane and place it, and then I guess click, and then there's a finalize button here. And now I can go and rotate around and I can see what's going on and I can select things. Works very nicely. Now I have some presets here. Let's say this low cutaway. So that's just set for a nominal, I think, 4-foot height for the lower floor. You can save as many of these as you like, but you can go. I've got this set up for a front view here, so now I can move this in, and we can very quickly go here and look at that. We can study what's going on with the framing here. If I double click back, it's going to put it back to where it was because it's a saved view. Now, if I go to cutting plane 5 axes, all right, now I can literally, have axes already set up on the top and all 5 of the 4 directions, and I can literally just pull and push this in there. Now, when we're doing cutaways, we can also do them using a marquee. And so this is an example of just a marquee that's been placed on the plan. and just saying, show me this. Now you notice that we're seeing through the elements. We're seeing, what is solid wood framing, or here what is insulated, just all of the different materials. But you can also say that you want to have it with a real clear presentation. This is not the end of an element. This is the cutaway of the element. Now, how do you do that? This is available in the View menu under Filter and Cut Elements in 3D. And right now it's set to custom for a red color here. If I go to the natural cutaway, then that setting was set to use element attributes. So by having this so easily at hand, you can switch back and forth without having to go find that dialog box, but also it just is a great learning tool. Now here's an interesting one for sections. Now this section here, this is actually, I'll show you the actual section down below. So in our working drawings here, we'll go to section B here. All right, so you can see this is a section. Now that section is actually staggered. So if I go to the first floor plan, and now, by the way, one annoying thing about ArchiCAD's use of cameras is that the cameras, there's no way to turn them off with a menu command. The only way to turn them off is to go to the camera tool, open up the camera settings, and either go into the path button and change it so that you say hide these, or a little bit quicker is open up the camera settings and switch to a different group. Like here's the keyframe fly around, but here's none. This is one built into the template which has no cameras in it. So just by doing that, you can turn off the cameras around there. Now you can see section B is going through the kitchen, cutting down and across. A little bit arbitrary, but it definitely is an interesting example of how a staggered section works. And if I go to section B here, we can see that there is a line indicating this dash line here indicates the where the cutaway is, but it's a little hard to tell what's going on, certainly. If I go to that cutaway here, and then I rotate, now it's clear. Okay, so this is another example of having presets that you can do this. Now, how did I create that? Well, I basically did a marquee on the floor plan that followed that particular arrangement. So if I wanted to do something similar, we go back to the plan view here, and maybe I'll just move this tab over to the left, so just in the usual position for the floor plan. If I go to the marquee tool, while I can do a marquee like this, and let's say solid, and I go to 3D like that, here, I can also go and do an irregular shape like this. And so what I basically did was I went along this area and then up past the building and across here. And that's essentially what I did to create that view, because when I go to 3D, we'll have a view that's similar. Now I do have to also make sure that I've got the layers set up for this. Now I just love the layers set up. Scott and I worked on this a lot years ago, and I've refined it some over the years, but it still stands up extremely well. We have groups of layer combinations for different conditions for the model, with the site and without, and with interior furnishings and without, etc. We have different layer combinations that are for different working drawings. We have some special ones for making presentations. We have some other special purpose ones for working on detailed drawings, and other ones for managing the template. But right now, if I just switch it to building and site, now we'll have that. Now actually, maybe for a section, we would want to use the same setting that we would have for sections, because then it turns off things like the landscaping, but it still shows all of the site environment here. So this is a view that I can save. I just took something here, I went to the View menu, 3D navigation extras look to perpendicular, and just clicked on a surface. And then you can see now I'm square on, and I saved that view. So that's how easy it is to save a view that now, when you bring it up, you can study it. All right, let's look at the marquee. So this is a marquee that I annotated in a view. Let's see, this is, if we go to, let's go to the layout book here and go to the detail drawings. All right, so you can see that view is annotated. If I select it and we say open the source view, now if it was a plan or a section, you know how it just jumps to that window with the right layers. This is going to a 3D drawing. So basically built into ArchiCAD since version, I don't know, 12 or 13 or something like that, is the ability to convert any 3D view into a drawing that you can then annotate. And just put labels and dimensions, etc. Now these elements are live in the sense that I can select them. I could change the size of it, or I could change other information about it. I can't move around freely because this is a defined view where the annotation sits. But here's something interesting. You see where it says 2x floor joist C structural? That's a label that's literally just saying, I go here and I go to edit it. You see that it's highlighting the whole thing here. It is using some information called the drawing note that's part of MasterTemplate's properties. So built into MasterTemplate are a few key data fields where you can put this information in. Now, I could have typed that in, but the fact is that it's actually in this element. Where is it? Here. So this text is in the element. So if I'm in a section, I can just say label it based on that field. If I'm on a plan, if I'm in any view, I can literally just say, give me a label showing the drawing note. So this also can be used inside a schedule, and I don't think I have time today to show you all the schedules, but there are a huge number of reporting tools built into MasterTemplate that use features like this. So the idea here that I learned this from Tim Ball, the architect in the UK who's been pushing the limits of ArchiCAD in terms of modeling as well as data derivation, is that if you have some fields where you put the data into the elements, you can then label them anywhere and everywhere and have them in the schedules with all of that information. So if I were to change this, that would change. And each one of these labels here is literally part of that element. So if I go to this one, we'll see that it says wood beam seated on it, bearing plate anchored, etc. So now we just go back to our, so we're in the cutting plane. Here's the marquee one that I had. Here's a large marquee. Now why do I put this here? Because it's got cutting planes, and I can literally go, that's the bottom one. Here, let's go, let's see, I can go and say create a cutaway, let's see here, create custom cutting plane and put one on here, and then I can zoom this in and finalize it. I can go and create another custom cutting plane here and get it to where I want it. So instead of using a marquee, I can create something similar here, and it's really a very powerful thing. So as a demonstration of the power of these cutting planes to create a view, it's very powerful. And this view is actually still live. It's still there. Now, I want to point out something here. You notice how in this view, the element has the cutout. So does this one. You see how the line work is very crisp, nice black line work. Now there are a few innovations here that were part of what took me forever to get MasterTemplate 22 out the door. I wanted to make sure that the line work would show up in 3D and in section and have the proper look for clarity. So there are some things here. if I look at this, what is this element? It is a complex profile. It's not super complex, but it's 4 separate pieces here. Now, each one of these, as I hover over it, you see it says fill pattern wood framing. This one is wood framing. This one is wood framing 2 and wood framing 2. Now, ArchiCAD 22, and maybe 1 or 2 years back, it started to be able to say, you know, you could put several of these pieces and it would draw the line for any internal divisions. It used to be that you had to have all 4 of them different, otherwise it would merge them. Now, what I found was you could have all 4 of them the same, but if you put 2 elements side by side or stacked, the line disappeared. I went, oh God, this is painful. Well, I've set it up so that if you were to put these 2 side by side, the left side and the right side are different. So this is going to be wood framing, this is wood framing 2, and we will see a line. And if you stack it top on top, this is bottom and top, this is a different one. So you only need 2 to make that work. Now, this is framing general. There's also one for, where do I have this? I know that I have more than one of these. All of a sudden, framing general 2. All right, so framing general 2 is similar, except it uses some different ones. This is framing 3, 3, 4, 4, so that these can work in certain ways, and these can be resized to 2 by 4, 2 by 10, 4 by 4, anything like that in there. Oh, here's framing structural right next to it, and these are actually using wood structural, so it's actually a different name than wood framing, etc. All right, now the other thing that I did here, and I'll just demonstrate it back in the main model here. If I go to just the main AXO here, is that you can see it looks pretty good. I mean, I think it looks pretty good. Well, one subtle thing is that I created a pen set called all black, some gray. If we use the standard view pens, you see how it's a little bit less distinct, and some things are sort of blue lines, and you may have some things that are red lines here. If we were to, say, give me hidden line, we're going to have, red lines and blue lines, etc. Well, it's just, I found that it was nicer to have a pen set for 3D that where most of the things were made black or gray, so that it would read better. And if we go back to the cutaway, let's say here, we're going to see that this is just nice, clear black lines and gray separators in here for that. Now look at what's going on here. This is an example of the level of detail that Tim Ball, does routinely. And I've taught, but I've never actually sort of modeled. With the help of Scott Bulmer, who co-created the template, and periodically I call on him to get some help. We created this. You can see what this is. This is a complex profile called a weep screed here, and the stucco is dying into this, and then of course it's going underneath this here. Now let's take a look at this detailed drawing, and again, you can do this yourself, but having this as a way to study how it was done is very powerful. So if I go to the section again here, we can see here's that area carefully delineated, and here is the detail drawing. Let's say go to the drawing in here. So here's the drawing. Let's go to the source view. Now, this is, as all details, it's got combinations of 2D elements and 3D elements in here. Now, if I go and say that I'd like to, let's see if I turn this on and that's the drawing. Here's the CD, which is the source of it. You can see how this fits in. And if I go to the pull down here, you can see what's going on with this. So basically, this is certainly the start of standard architectural practice. Is, you have a section drawing and you call out a detail and you add more information. And of course, this is designed to be at a larger scale, 3 inches to a foot, I think, or 1 inch to a foot. That's 3 inches to a foot here. But showing this in the context of the actual 3D model, and you saw how that was modeled. So if we go back to that cutaway here, how was that modeled? Well, you saw this complex profile here. There's another one for the cornice. There's another one here. Actually, it's here. If I select that, oh, I guess I'm selecting, there we go. Okay, so there's another one here where the tile dies into it and it's got our drip edge, etc. So you can study this to see how this was done. And of course, this was done so we have drainage here, and it's actually multiple roofs so that it drains down towards each direction. Now, you don't have to model in such detail as this. I wanted to show you, in terms of the template, how you could model, but also how you can do things in different ways. So, for example, if I go into the sections, so let's see, turn off the presentation ones, that'll simplify it, and these other views here. So let's go to our section. So we're in section B. Let's check section A here. Now, the roof edge here is made up of a profile. So that's just another profile that has a blocking and the eave section here. This wall actually has the framing, so it's got built in the framing just like we had over here. And there's been a little subtraction so that the roof is fitting over here and is notched around that. And that's all very easily done. Now, if we go to I think the B section here, we have the same thing. The wall here, this is a 3D element, etc. Now, if we go up here, this is a 2D element. So this is actually a 2D element that you can say, I want it to be a 2x4. Here, I want it to be a single or double. This is built into the standard ArchiCAD library here. Now, what I want to point out is that these are then 2D elements. And in fact, this one, well, actually, in this case, the wall one is a 3D, but I think over here, yeah, this is a 2D and this is a 2D. So in the sample project, I carefully illustrate how you can model in 3D. For example, all of these elements here are 3D in the larger volume, and they automatically cut through the insulated space there. Now, another thing that took a while to set up, and frankly, the Graphisoft template does not do a great job on all of these things, is to get the line weights. So this is looking at it in, hairline or just a clean single line thing. If I switch to true line weight, we can see what's going on here. Now, again, I looked carefully at defining these types of profiles in a way that would give you nice clarity when you're printing here. Now, here's a little subtle thing. You notice how this is, and I'll just deselect it. You notice how this is a little bit thinner. So if we're going to have it exactly in line with this here, not slightly above or whatever, then we're going to see the line of this here. Now, this is slightly heavier than that. Now, you may not notice it at first glance, but when I select it, you can see it more obviously. So I found by experimentation that by using a certain weight here and a certain weight here, it gave me what I think is a pretty pleasing result in terms of the weights. So all of these things were just carefully refined. I think that's what I want to highlight in terms of this year's template, is that I overhauled it thoroughly to try to get just the most optimum set of conditions and definitions and demonstrations so that you can understand and take advantage of it in your own work. Let's see, stop for a moment and give you get some feedback. We'll have another about 15 minutes before we finish up. So want to get some questions here. I have not shown you the layout book. I haven't shown you the schedules. There's all sorts of things, even the view map for all the different construction drawing types. I'll definitely show you that, but I just can't show you everything in a single one. All right. When copying a play with the marquee, the annotations within the section elevations do not come forward with the project. Okay, I'll have to see what you're referring to. That is J. Okay, I'm not, but if you're, the annotations within, yeah, that's right. When you're copying the virtual building from one project to another, it'll bring in all the stories and the annotations there, but not the annotations on the sections and elevations. That's why in the early to mid stages, when you haven't done any annotations or just a little bit, it's pretty easy. But if you've done a lot of work on your sections and elevations, then it just becomes more work to transfer it, to migrate it in the template. Now, you may think naively that, hey, I have my project, can I just bring in the template to my project? And the answer is no, we can't bring in the template to a project, but you can copy the building into another file that has the template as the basis. Okay, does hot linking files create a large file? The legend components are a certain size. I don't know exactly. If you said, you know what, I don't need these anymore. I've already gotten what I need. Now I'm just working on the detailing the project, etc. You can delete the reference. It's literally just a pasted module. Now, Hotlink modules traditionally are used to bring in a building or 2 or 3 buildings into a site, and each one of them is linked to an external file, or to bring in a room and or a suite or an office layout into a project and then repeat it n times, or to bring in one story and repeat it a bunch of times. Modules are used for all sorts of different repetitive things and for referencing. You can literally just select it and delete it, goes out of the project. But I've found that although the file is larger than you would expect when you start a fresh project, it doesn't get in the way with current computer technology. So Jalat, what happens when you change the view you've referenced? Doesn't it go away in the worksheet as well? Not quite sure. You can redefine a view, and if you have a view on a layout, it'll just, as a drawing, it'll just have the new one. If you were talking about the worksheet where I did the sketch thing, it was just 2D line work, and I literally just pasted it in and did that. So that has to be manually updated, but that's the trade-off here. You have fine control over the line work, but it is a manual process. Mikhail says, how do you deal with attributes? They can mess up composites and surfaces. Well, I start out with the Graphisoft attributes in the US, and for the international version, it'll be the international attributes, and then add to them. So if you bring in stuff from a standard Graphisoft project, it'll come in. Now, if you've created your own custom stuff, it just gets added into the list. Now, if you have things with the same name, then it can get a little confusing, because when you're pasting in your project into this, and you have something called exterior wall type 1, and there's one already that says type 1 here, it'll basically say, oh, I know what that is, and it'll use the one that's native here. So you could have some changes there. One of the things that I did, again, subtle stuff, is to make all the attributes for surfaces and composites and building materials all at a higher index number, so that it's easier to see and organize your stuff. I start them at 100 or 200. You know, if Graphisoft has 150 surfaces, I started, you know, our new surfaces at 200. Okay, Andy says, it's taken me a fair while, but finally the penny has dropped. Awesome. Looks like a lot of those view map items are missing from the international template, or am I having the wrong beta version? The beta version that you may have downloaded was from MasterTemplate 21. And I'm going to be now, I've just released the USA version of the template today. I'm going to be now going and hopefully pretty quickly just incorporating the new features into the international version. So Graphisoft didn't change the attribute structure very much for 22 in the international version. So that made that part of my work a lot simpler. And I've done a lot of experimentation to get things optimized here. It'll be relatively easy for me to transfer it in, you know, in the environment of the international one. So yes, the beta version of MasterTemplate 22 is really MasterTemplate 21, just with library compatibility with 22. So you won't see everything there. How big is the template? Roughly 100 megabytes, give or take. After working on it, I should save a view, otherwise it comes back for the to the saved one. Yeah, I mean, when you double click on a view, it goes to a particular context, certain layers, certain orientation in 3D, etc. If you move around, if you change the layers and you want to retain that, you should either redefine the view, if that's what you want, or create a new view and save that. And you can create as many views as you like. MasterTemplate just has some very useful presets and a place where I suggest you put your current frequently used views. And at any point, maybe you're working on the roof framing and you're just doing a particular cutaway, you can just save that view, and then you can always go back and forth between seeing the whole model and seeing just the cutaway. So it's a very powerful thing. Where to save the new view? Views are in the view map. So very briefly for new users, this is the project map. These are the raw viewpoints in the project that can be viewed with different layers, different zoom, different model view options, etc. The view map allows you to have a hierarchical organization to make it clearer where things are. Each one of the views has a viewpoint plus the layers, model view options, graphic overrides, all of these things that essentially allows you to reliably get things the way you want to see them, either for working or for putting into a drawing. So it's in the view map, and down at the bottom, there's an option to say, save current view. This would save a view with this particular zoom, with these particular settings for this. Okay, if I'm understanding you correctly, this is Ken, says the detailed view is still in model form 3D, even though it's showing the 2D version. I'm curious how you kept that in model form, because whenever I cut a detail from a section or plan, it automatically makes the drawing 2D. You misunderstood, and I'll just try to explain in 30 seconds rather than demonstrate. Basically, yes, I took a section, put a detail call out, it created a copy of the line work. The line work is now in a separate window. We can annotate it, put in dimensions, put in labels, you know, etc. Change maybe the fills to look better for that context, etc. It is purely 2D, but it does have a source view in most cases that you can use as a virtual trace to just sort of see behind it. And of course, if your model changes a bit, you may want to just see the current context and adjust your detail to suit the model. So that's what it was. It is a 2D view derived from a section from the 3D model. Hey, Garrett saying hello. A marquee can have any freeform shape by space clicking on a line, curve, or splice. You could even show all the elements inside or outside the marquee. Great point. I'm going to show you here. This is another thing that I struggled with, but came up with, I think, a very elegant solution. If we go to our foundation plan in our working drawings, you notice that there is some notes here that are in yellow. This is in the sample project just to say, hey, pay attention to this. This is a learning experience right now. The detail marker is actually linked to a 3D document to recreate the source view. Use a single story marquee here. I'm going to do this a little bit bigger. I'm going to do this here. And rather than do that, just to show you, and set the layer combination to model, building, and site. So I say model, building, and site, and then I go to 3D with that. Actually, I need to put this on a single story. Sorry, a single story, and then go to 3D, and now we have that cutaway. Now, I remember I made the marquee a little bit bigger than the actual what that call out was, but that was a way to do that. Now, I also put in see, that's the detail. I know in some cases I actually put in a note with a marquee. I can't remember where I did it now, but basically I put it on a special layer that's just for notes, you know, for internal notes, not for printing. And you can literally use the marquee and eyedrop that boundary and then bring that up. So great point. Can I use model files in a solo license? Okay, so Monica, you have ArchiCAD Solo, which means you can't reference in external files yourself, but MasterTemplate's Hotlink Module, M-O-D-U-L-E, module file will work within your Solo project. You won't be able to update the module file directly because of the limitations of the Solo project, but you can use what's in there. And you can delete it if you say, you know, I don't want it, but you can't actually rework it and put it in again with a Solo. All right, Garrett says, very handy technical illustration tool. Yeah, when you have that marquee in any different form. All right, so Jalat, your current trace and reference is set to EX03 weep. Without changing that, can you open the worksheet that shows your kit of parts? All right, so so we're in. This is a detail drawing here, okay. So I just go to the project map, and this is a detail drawing. The kit of parts is in a worksheet, and so if I go to interactive legends, and by the way, there are different ones, like for example, this interactive legend is for sections. So if I'm in a section and I want to put in some 2D elements, I can just grab them here. So for, let's show that. But basically we can go, here's interactive legends sections. I can open up interactive legends. Let's see, open a new tab. We can have multiple tabs. So you can see now I can switch back and forth between these. And in fact, well, the main interactive legend is this one. I say open a new tab. And so this is now here. So I actually have all of these available. If you have a large screen, you can literally put them all in different places. Let me just show you again if we were in section, let's see, are we in, here's a B section here. So this is another example of just using virtual trace. I can go and say that I would like to take, this is a section, I'm going to take this and say show as trace reference. And you can see it's off to the side here. And now I want to put the human figures in. I can go and eyedrop that and paste them in. You know, and we wanted to note some things about the roof. You know, I can go eyedrop this, and we're now in the label tool. Make sure I've got it so I can sort of put it in whatever orientation I want. There's roof. Here, go in and say, eyedrop this, finish floor. So these notes here are built into the project. So in other words, you could go in your template and just sort of drop in your common notes for it. And then it becomes easily available in every section and every elevation. So if I was in an elevation, so if we go to this, and I think there's one more thing I want to show you before we finish up, which is another example of ArchiCAD's power that's just set up in the template for you to take advantage of. So if I go down to, actually two more things I just have to show you here before we finish up. If we are in, where are they? Elevations. And let's go to East Elevation here. And let's go to I think this one might have been the elevation one, sections here, show as trace reference. Now the trace reference is a little bit in the way, so I'm going to say move it. I'll just move it off to the side, maybe a little bit further, just get it out of the way. Now I want to get a car in here, just have to find where the, that's the car symbol. So I say I want to put a car in, right in front there. And you can, and that is an object that we can go in and say, you know what, the client actually has a different type of car, something like that, whatever. So these are standard ones that are in the ArchiCAD library, but this is just a quick way of doing it. You want to get a tree, you can get that and say, I want to put a tree here. Maybe that's a little bit too close, so we drag it off to the side a little bit. And then I can turn off the trace and reference, and now we're looking at this in here. Now, this is 2D stuff that we're just putting in very quickly for that. And of course, we'd want to have it sitting on the ground rather than off to the side. But I want to show you in the presentation views for elevations. We are in the east elevation. I'm going to double click on east elevation. All right, so now what are we seeing? We're seeing the exact same viewpoint. The same elevation marker is defining this view, but we're shooting it in a different way. We've got no overrides graphically, whereas when we were in the this elevation, we were using some overrides that say no shading. I can also say I want it to have no shading or shadow, and you'll see the shadow disappear. And I can also go and say I'd like to have it just plain, and then the vector line work will disappear. So these are using graphic overrides that are built into MasterTemplate. Again, built into ArchiCAD, but just very, very conveniently there. You don't have to have multiple different markers to create a rendered view versus a plan view. So I wanted to show you that. I wanted to show you also just the difference in the working drawing. So here is our first floor plan. Let me just zoom out a little bit. We'll go to reflected ceiling plan. Now, all of these are what are called clone folders, which means that if you have a 10-story building, they'll just create more stories, very similar. Each one of these has a layer combination, condoc reflected ceiling. It also has potentially some changes to the model view options, etc. Here's the electrical plan. Now, if I go back here, just one of the key things that was an innovation years ago is to say, this dimension, this cloud, and this note are all on what layer? It's on a layer called U drawing ceiling. Remember, I'm on the ceiling plan, right? If I go to the layer combinations, we'll see that U drawing ceiling is turned on, and these other U layers are turned off. So ceiling is only shown on this one construction document. So you can put any 2D annotation that's only on one drawing on the U layer that's unique to that particular drawing there. Very powerful. You can use text, lines, dimensions, labels, fills, anything that's 2D can be put on there. And there's different styles for electrical. Sometimes you include the electrical stuff in the ceiling plan. Sometimes you include it in a separate plan. Sometimes you might have it in an MEP plan here. We have the room finish plans where we can see the schedules or the information that would relate to the finishes and other notes in here. And we've got a simplified view here. That's a graphic override. In our structural model, we've got simplified information here. If you wanted to calculate areas, there's another view that turns on just a layer that's specifically for calculating areas, and you can have as many fills as you want there. You can also calculate areas with zones, of course. And here is, for example, the zones, color-coded, furniture plans here. So all of these different styles. Now you notice that we've got the insulation in the walls. Now, is that something you want to show visually in this drawing or on every sheet? Maybe, maybe not. Well, I struggled with this a lot to say, how do you turn this on and off? And I couldn't find anything that would turn off just the insulation, but leave the other line work, until I realized that if I made the insulation in MasterTemplate, use a particular pen and only use that pen for this purpose, then I could switch my pen set to one that makes that pen 131 white. And now we can keep all the rest of it. So essentially the insulation line work is there, it's just been made invisible. And if I go to the floor plan sheets, here we'll see other variations that are built in to MasterTemplate. And again, just so many different things, renovation stuff. Here we've got color coding or shading to indicate that this is the new part of the building. Here, the demolition plan, the usual sort of dashed lines, demolition legend. Here, some notes that are shown just in a particular context when we're showing both the new and the demo. This is, a hybrid. We're saying take these walls out, add those walls here, and then over in this area, this is the one without insulation. It's basically set up to use the pen set that hides the insulation. So what I found was a very simple way to deal with this. And what happened here? This view somehow has disappeared. Manual update, let's just update this. I know I was dragging a copy of things earlier. There we go. Okay, I don't know what happened there. Okay, so we've gone 1 hour and 50 minutes. I actually have an ArchiCAD coaching program call in 10 minutes. I know that there are probably I'll just read off some last questions. What did you think? Do you think that MasterTemplate could be useful for your office? Did you learn a few things today that you can take advantage of? Write it here in the chat so I can read it, and also send me a note on support@bobrow.com. If you're interested in MasterTemplate, it's on sale right now during my intro period. You can see details in the emails that I send out and on the website. I'm really so excited, can you tell, to share this with you and other ArchiCAD users, because ArchiCAD is so powerful, but it's so darn complex that it helps to really have things set up in a way where you can just quickly use them rather than having to reinvent them. Let's see. Okay. All right. So McKeel has a question about the attributes, overwrite by name and use high indexes. So yeah, attribute management is complicated. I think you're on the right track, McKeel, but I'd have to go into it. How long will the reduced price be in effect? At least through next week, the 15th. That's Monday. Yeah, I'll probably extend it because I didn't get the template out until, no, the 15th is 11 days from now. All right, so at least till October 15th, maybe longer. Is there a MasterTemplate video that explains how the template is set up and where to find things and why? I'm going to be creating new videos. There's some extensive ones in the MasterTemplate website that go into this. A lot of it is still the same as it was years ago, but there are new things. So I'm going to be totally reworking and creating new videos this fall, as well as updating the manual, which is very detailed and needs to be updated. How do you get to interactive legends to keep the trace reference module file turned on? Basically, I found that if you've got the worksheet and it's got a virtual trace, whenever you open up the worksheet, it'll still show the same virtual trace. And I actually have saved views to say jump to the kitchens, or jump to the wall types, or jump to the window types, etc. So instead of picking up with the eyedropper the elevation objects, is it possible to make it into favorites? Yes, all of those things are in favorites. I didn't get a chance to show you, but basically if we go into favorites here, all of these things here, if we go into ArchiCAD design, if we go into the arrow tool, you can see all of these. And so for example, let's see, anyway, I mean, if we go to the objects here, they're grouped. So AMT for master templates. So if we wanted the AMT cabinets, you know, here are the ones that are set up in a certain area. Here, I think if there's kitchen cabinets, you know, there's more here. So all of these are in the favorites. You can do it. Now, favorites are great, but they get a little unwieldy because they're just one list. And even though you have hierarchy and folders and you can actually do visual previews, we can say, let's see, visual previews like this. Still, there are some advantages to the interactive legends, and the fact that you can literally copy room groupings in is also very powerful. So when printing, the blue doors and the red roof lines will show in color or black. So that's Monica's question. So on the layout sheet here, when I select a drawing, the original one was using a pen set. The original one was using the a pen set for the views, but we are overriding that with the layout pens. So very, very briefly, document pen sets. The view pens have all these colors. The layout pens darken everything up to make it read better. And that's provided by Graphisoft, and I just incorporated it there. They used to call it ArchiCAD 18 standard pens. Now they just call them GSNA ArchiCAD pens here. But I've got this one that's all black, some gray. That's what I'm using in the 3D views because it just reads better. Now it's optional, but I think I like the way it looks by putting the views into that pen set. And by the way, if you put it into this one, this is used for background drawings that you might overlay here. You know, and there you have AutoCAD pens. If you're bringing in an AutoCAD drawing and you want to say, the green lines, what are they? And you want to be able to know that what you're seeing is green is what they see there. Okay. How and where do we download MasterTemplate 22 if we're eligible for a free upgrade? I just sent out an email this morning to everyone who is on my list. If I missed you, and you should get it, just email me to support@bobrow.com. But it's available for download now in the MasterTemplate member site. Jalot says, nice improvements, Eric. Donald Sealander, great job, Eric. Monica, very useful. Yes, I could learn as always. Thank you. Cheryl, thank you. I'll contact you for additional questions. McKeel, take out a tab was new for me amongst things. Okay, to have a new tab. Well done and thanks. Stephen, Kathleen, thank you so much. Really well presented. Thank you, Buzz. Nice job. Thanks for all the hard work. Donald, will the recording be available for others on our office to view? Yes, I will post the recording. Daryl, put a circle around the pointer in color so we can see the placement of what you were clicking on. Some of us are slower than others. Okay, a good point. I'm moving very fast. I'm not sure whether the recording with GoToWebinar allows me to highlight the cursor. But you can always play it back. You can say, I want to watch that part again there in the recording. How can you update MasterTemplate 2.22? If you already own MasterTemplate, you can get an upgrade pricing. So it's a lot cheaper. And then you can incorporate many of these features. So, you know, I'll be giving instructions for migration and upgrade, you know, as part of the new documentation. It's essentially like moving a project forward into the new version. Stan says, I can see the advantages. I tend to get a bit overwhelmed by the breadth of the template and of course ArchiCAD in general. Well, I'm trying to make it less overwhelming by setting it all up intuitively. I just gave you a fire hose worth of information, but definitely, hopefully making it easy to use. The sheet index table of contents on the cover sheet and revisions are a challenge, particularly when deadline is looming. Do I have a video on the subject? I don't have a video specifically. I'm sure it was covered in one of the older ones, but essentially the sheet index has a criteria. It's a list of layouts based on the criteria. So for example, if you want to say just certain specific subsets are in it, you can do that, or you can say all subsets minus, the ones that are for presentation. Maybe you have some that are setting just for presentation. You can say this list should not have that. So it's a criteria. So that's the nutshell of it. All right, Akil says, I'm planning to make a plan with a PLN with many floors. Every floor has a theme, kitchen detailing, then publish the modules. This way I can do easy future maintenance to my legends or modules. That's a good idea. Yeah, that's another way to handle room groupings, etc. I think you're on the right track there. All right, Chris Craver, thank you. David Lomar, can't wait to get started with it. Thank you from Jim, thank you. Hey, Abdi, nice to see you. Colin says, I have used it for years, very thorough. I'm always impressed with your creative workarounds. Thank you, Colin. With that, I will say thank you for attending. Please use ArchiCAD, enjoy it, create, make good buildings in the world, serve your clients well, and just know that I'm really here to help you be successful. So it's been my pleasure to share this with you today. Have a great day or evening, wherever you are. I'll catch you in a little while.